Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is wonderful to be with you all here this morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever it is for your given time zone. I am super excited to be with you all today. I realized that as I'm just thinking about it now that we did have a time change here this last week, and so I don't know if that'll affect those of you who are able to get in here, or at least make sure that we're all on the same page. Today we're going to talk about taking the test and the most difficult areas of the test that for every one of the given Magento certifications. So that'll be a very important topic, and I'm going to share something new with you all at the end, something that I think is also incredibly important as well. So hopefully you stick around. I will, again, as always, be available for the full hour here. So if you are interested in, if you have questions or whatever, I'd be more than happy to do my best to answer those in any way possible. So we're going to be getting started here. I'm going to wait just a minute to let everybody get in. I started very promptly on time, but I know everybody is. It does take a couple minutes to get in there, but I have actually over the past couple weeks I started like about a minute late. So we'll give it a minute or two to get for everybody to get in here. While we do that, I always love to hear how your past week or two has gone, especially in relation to study. So, how's it been going? Are you able to dedicate that specific time to studying? I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and that is a unique case, I think. In this person's just not been able to pass the test, and as I was talking with him, I think it was highly likely that this dedicated study time is not happening. And I could be wrong on that, but it just seems like that is the solution to this person's challenges in being able to pass the test. So do not forget that dedicated study time. So the question is, how's all of your study going? Are you able to get that study time in? Are you able to focus, to really dig deep into every aspect of Magento that you are supposed to know to pass this test? Or is it somewhat fragmented? And ultimately, we're about a little over halfway through this certification challenge, and depending on when you have the test scheduled, we could be at a make or break point for whether or not you will be able to pass the test. Workloads never get lighter, at least in my experience. Stuff never changes. I mean, we're always going to have a big project, a really cool project that we're supposed to be putting 12 hours a day in on, and we have to keep pushing on it, right? And so, the certification, that can happen later. That can happen next year or whatever. And then the way this works is you'll get the email here. I'll send out a couple emails in May. Hey guys, how's it going? We're coming up on our deadline, May 30, 31st. I always forget whether that's 30 or 31 days in May. We're getting there, and how's the test studying going? And you're going to be like, oh shoot, I need to get this test done. Okay, I'm gonna cram on it. I'm gonna cram on it real hard. Of course, then you cram on it for a couple days, and then the project ramps up. It's about to go live. It's about to take a whole bunch more of your time, and of course, the studying falls by the wayside. Well, then May 21st, the day maybe that you have scheduled for taking your test, arrives or is about to arrive, and you're like, oh no, I gotta start studying again. That is not a way for successful study. It just is not. And then you take the test, you fail, you're disappointed. It's like, oh, I didn't get to be I missed out on the certification challenge and all of that stuff. So what I am saying is be consistent, study consistently. And that is a huge key to passing. And I hope I've given you every other one of those keys in order to pass in the past, including these 6 webinars, in order to equip you with every single tool you need in order to pass the test. In addition, working through the developer study group. So I'm making a slight change on the developer study group, and I will not be doing it next week, but then we're going to pick it up every week after that. So I think starting the beginning of April, the first week, Saturday in April, we're going to dive back into the developer study groups. And I'm really excited. I love those. It's a great opportunity to be able to get together and to work through some things as far as studying, and me to share some knowledge with you and you guys to be able to ask questions. So that's really awesome. Let's dig in. I wanted to share with you something I am super stoked about, and that is the Certification Challenge t-shirt. Now, this will be available to everyone who has participated in this, whether or not you took the test or not. Anybody who has joined the Certification Challenge, this shirt will be available for you. We're going to make some tweaks. This is not in its full final form, but I just had to share it with you. I'm super stoked about it. I love the concept that the artist came up with for this, and it will be available for those of you who are part of the challenge and submit your scores. You will get a free one of these mailed to you. In addition, you will also, 2 of you will get an Apple Watch. So 2 of you, again, who have sent in your scores and passed the test. So that's a good reason to send in your scores. So don't forget to do that. Well, actually, let me just put it this way. I think we are about 30 people. I'm guessing it's going to go up to 50 or 60 by the time we are all said and done. And so you have a really good chance, well, much better chance than typical, call it sweepstakes, where you would have 1,000 people, right? So your chances are significantly better in this case. So again, this shirt will be available for purchase, again, as minimal cost as I can possibly make it. But I wanted to be able to get this shirt out for everybody. And so I'll let you know as I have more details on that. It'll be a pre-order, and then we'll ship it out at a hopefully a shortly later date. But anyways, this is the shirt. I am really excited about it, and I hope that you will be able to, if you pass the test, of course, you'll be able to wear one for free. But if you aren't able to get the test taken or whatever, this I hope will serve as a motivation, kind of a participation trophy of, hey, I participated in this. I worked through this myself, and I get to wear this shirt as well. So anyways, that I wanted to share that. And we have a lot of passes this week. Or the last 2 weeks. I am super stoked about that. I won't go through all the names here, but great work. I do want to call it Edward. JavaScript and he's passed. Okay, let me back up. Full stack developer. In order to achieve that, it's kind of like a combination badge, right? So basically, you have expert developer, you have front end developer, and you have JavaScript. Those 3 tests come together to make the full stack developer. And Edward has passed already the expert in the front end, and now he has passed the JavaScript. Getting this full stack developer badge is a real badge of honor. It's puts you, again, it's probably the top 1, 2, or 3% of Magento developers worldwide, credentialed Magento developers. Again, I am confident credentials don't mean everything, and so you could be the best Magento developer in the world and not have any credentials at all. So, but as far as credentialed developers go, full stack puts you easily in the top, I'm going to guess 3% or better. So incredible work there. Great job, Edward, and everyone. Excellent work. Master Architect as well. That is a very difficult one, and that was passed. Sunil passed that. One thing I just noticed, though, this morning is for those of you that are considering going for order management, that is going to be retired March 31st. So if you want to get it, you'd want to get it right away before March 31st, or move on to another test if you were planning on taking that. I don't know if almost any of you were planning on taking that. I think it was maybe one. Bart, I think, had taken the test, and he was part of this group. So, but otherwise, I'm not aware of anybody else. But I just want to put out that information statement. And then also the deadline for the pass, it is 31 days. I looked it up for this slide, but of course I forgot it then. So the deadline for the pass is May 31st. So make sure you get your scores in by May 31st. That is incredibly important. There's a link in our Slack channel as far as the form to submit those. If your score is not in the form, I am sorry, but you are not eligible. You are not in consideration for getting those AirPods. So make sure you get in the Slack, get that link to the Google form, and then drop in your scores. It's very important to see that. So, yeah. Any questions about the challenge so far, or test taking, or anything like that before I dive in to what I was going to talk about today? Any questions at all? You guys have been a little bit quiet this morning. That's okay. It is Saturday morning, and Saturday afternoon or evening, depending on where you live, and we had our daylight savings time change, so it might be a little earlier for some of you. Any questions? If not, we will continue on here. I think one of the most important concepts to passing a test, and again, it sounds really elementary, but it's super critical, is distraction-free study. Distraction-free study. And I harp on this all the time, but we live in an incredibly, hey, Gareth, welcome, come on in. It's good to see you there, friend. We live in a very fragmented, our attention in society today is incredibly fragmented. And I think a good portion of that is due to these phones here that we all carry in our back pocket. They're because of these distractions, we sit down, we have great intentions of focused study for 30 minutes. And then we get a text. We see a news article pop up on our screen. Oh, that's way more interesting than studying. So it's never a bad idea. In fact, I would say it's a good idea. Put your phone in another room. Put your computer in airplane mode or distraction-free mode. I forget what that is called. That is called do not disturb. That's right. Put your computer in do not disturb mode and get studying. This is incredibly important. And what I always recommend is 30 minutes every single morning. So 15 minutes before you normally start work, come in 15 minutes early, get to your computer. If your commute is 20 feet or less or more, plus or minus, right? So come to your computer 15 minutes early, and maybe even ask your manager if you can have an extra 15 minutes on the clock for extra study time yourself. So get in there, spend that 30 minutes a day studying. Absolutely critical. Put a goal on your calendar that you will study for at least 4 days a week, 30 minutes a day. This is probably the number one suggestion that will help you pass. And what I find is every day that I do not study, I feel like it maybe almost knocks off a day of the days I did study. And so make sure to get that study done every single day. It is very, very important. Hey, Charles, come on in here. Welcome. Yeah, it's been a little bit quiet this morning, but I would figure that is due to daylight savings time change, one of those brilliant ideas that politicians have. Okay, so yes, focus on get this study done be very intentional and consistent with it. Let's talk about, though, I would like to, well, actually first, yeah, let's actually talk about some of the most difficult areas in taking and passing the test for each one of these tests. So I have the unique advantage of getting in and seeing people's test scores. Whenever you fail a Magento test, Magento sends you your score by objective. So you can get in there and you say, okay, well, I got X% on this, X% on that. Here's where I need to improve. Here's where I need to improve. And so it's really helpful to be able to see that. However, what I've done here is aggregated these values across a lot of information that I've gotten, and I want to share that with you. So hopefully I can help you avoid failing a Magento test. At least that's the goal. And one thing is to mention, never, I'm going to say never, but I put that in quotes, but never start with the expert developer test. Always start with professional developer. If expert is your goal, start with professional and then go to expert. So I would like to run through for each one of these tests the most difficult area of each one of them and give you some suggestions on how to best study for that. But before I do, I have a question here. Sephian said, how to prepare while giving practice tests. I have 4 sets available and they are limited now. What is the best strategy? So yes, I will speak to the 4 practice tests at this point. What I have found is that I believe that 4 practice tests has as much or more value than unlimited for a month. So our offering previously for practice tests was as many as you wanted to take for 1 month. And what I learned in that process is that the value of every practice test was incredibly minimal. And so people would go through and take the test 50 to 100 times, and I am not joking. I have the numbers to prove that. There was a good number of people that did that 50 to 100 times, and then by the time they were, I don't know, had taken their at least at most their 10th test, they were pushing 90 to 100% on every single time they took the practice test. So they got 90 to 100% every time they took the practice test, and then they'd go and fail the real test. And that's incredibly disturbing to me, because one of my value propositions with practice tests is that it has to be a legitimate assessment of how you'll perform on the real test. Incredibly important. So that I was failing that value proposition on a number of people who are purchasing the practice tests for me. And so by switching it up to, and someone gave me this recommendation a month or two ago, it was a brilliant idea. By switching it over to a bundle of takes, so for example, 4 or 6, each practice test take will be highly valued. As such, as you work through it, you're going to hopefully take the advice that is given in there, i.e. don't look at the answers until you are basically ready to take the test. You're going to work through the test as if it's a real test. You're going to look at the end of it, the test, to say, here is my score by objective. I am going to go study those scores. I only have 4 takes. I'm going to use those 4 takes very wisely instead of just taking them 50 to 100 times, which does take time. You know, if every test, I think every test take has at least 30 questions, if not 40 or 50. By the time you get through all those, that could be at least a half an hour, if not more, of time in order to answer those questions. That was a half an hour, at least half an hour to an hour every time you took it. That could have been spent on legitimate study. And again, if it's a 50 to 100 times that we're talking about taking the test, that very much makes a difference between pass or failure right there. So again, backing it down to 4, 6 practice test takes, I believe and have seen, and I have not seen the final numbers yet, but I believe that will greatly increase your chances of passing the test. Exactly, Gareth. Yep. There's only so much value. Now, the one way to increase the value from the practice test is by not looking at the answers, again, until you're pretty much ready to take the test. Looking at the answers takes away the assessment value, the value of assessing whether or not you are ready to take the test. It completely removes that value. So anyways, that's that I wanted to call that out because it's really important, and I'm glad you asked that question there. So I know it's a change, and I hate making changes because people know what they like and like to stick with that. But this is a change I very strongly feel is for the better, and I give the reason all over the place just so that you all know why we've made that change. Okay, so difficult areas for professional developer. Magento UI and Adminhtml. So you've seen this on your screen for a long time. Gareth, yep, again, a great point. Yes, it's good to see, get an assessment for where you are at before starting to study. And yeah, absolutely, totally, couldn't agree more. Okay, so yes, so talking about the difficult areas for professional developer. Magento UI. So this is talking about front-end development. There is a little bit of conversation about that, developing on the front end. Again, the professional developer is the easiest test that Magento offers. And by saying that, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's the easiest of all the Magento tests. So keep that in mind. The Magento UI, basically what it's wanting you to know is how to customize the layout XML and how to create PHTML files, as well as a little bit of theme work too. So it's not really asking you to dive into less files or hardly even any JavaScript files. There might be 1 or 2 questions about JavaScript on there, but very, very minimal. So the Magento UI, though, how to work with PHTML templates, like in Layout XML, what are the directives that are available? So creating a block, using arguments on the block, containers, how do those work? What situations would they work in? What are the attributes that are available for a given container? So again, you can use a container to just group blocks, or you can use a container to render a HTML tag and then put blocks inside of that. So like a div tag, and then you put render out all the blocks inside there. So yeah, that would be the Magento UI aspect of this. The Adminhtml, there is no UI components as far as what I can remember or see from the study guide. There is no UI components on this test. It entirely covers how to use the Adminhtml area. So how to, there might be conversation about order statuses on there, working with admin users, using the ACL, that sort of thing. So Adminhtml is another one of those areas that's really lacking in people's knowledge for whatever reason. And so, but I give that to you now so that you can study for that and be really prepared for that. So these are the two lacking areas for the professional developer test, Magento UI and Adminhtml. You want to be an expert on those two before taking the test. Let me answer this. Oh, Charles, yes, change isn't a problem as long as everything stays the same. I get it. Like Henry Ford said, he likes any color for painting the car as long as it's black. Same concept. That's great. Manisha said, is associate developer exam, does it also cover Magento Commerce also or only Magento Community? It covers only open source. The only two tests in the Magento repertoire that cover commerce is business practitioner and master architect, which is kind of funny. Master architect has very little, if anything, to do with architecture. It has everything to do with expert developer +1. So just keep that in mind. But yes, the only two tests are commerce related are professional and master. Excuse me, business practitioner and master. Okay, so let me see here. These are the two difficult areas for expert developer. You want to, again, make sure you are experts here, pun intended. Okay, so the Adminhtml area. In our study group, we've been working through this a little bit, and in particular, the UI components has been the most difficult of all these areas. Adminhtml is absolutely critical to understand. Again, this takes things to a little bit deeper level. For example, I think it's on this test, there's a discussion of extension attributes, I think, if I remember correctly. Extension attributes. Well, how do those work? In what cases are those useful? And and this is where studying for the test, again, I had a conversation with somebody about this week. Studying for the test is at least 80 to 90% of the value to you that a certification brings. And here's why. The Adminhtml, and you're working through extension attributes, you will learn what cases the extension attributes are designed to be used. You will start building your applications that are compatible with extension attributes, and thus your application, what you're building is your extensions, your modifications will automatically be available for the API. But here's where it circles back, is that extension attributes, you can associate an ACL resource with an extension attribute, which means that give an admin, admin's permissions can also determine whether or not an extension attribute is shown via the API. So it's that rabbit trail to go down and to understand exactly how all this stuff fits together. You want to become an expert on ACL. I wouldn't say you need to become an expert at UI components. You need to be decent with them, be able to fairly comfortably create a UI component, a form or a grid, and we've been working through that in our developer study group, just kind of a fairly informal, here's how we do it, here is basically starting from scratch. And my goal is to less train you on the right way as on these developer study groups, as opposed to walking through the process together. How would you discover this from the beginning? Kind of like a beginner's guide in that way. So and again, to be clear, there's a ton of areas that one can take that to and tremendous growth there. But again, you want to be fairly comfortable with Adminhtml. And checkout, that's probably the other area we just more or less throw up our hands and say, I don't want to touch it. But remember, as you are able to master an area in Magento, that checkout is probably one of the better ones to master. That's why in my expert developer course, and this is not a sales pitch here, but in my expert developer course, when I was making that course, I was sat down and thought, what is one of the most difficult challenges I can tackle that touches most every aspect of Magento development? And the idea that kept coming to my mind, and I kept pushing it out, was a gift card module. I'm like, oh man, I do not want to do a gift card module. It touches inventory. I know I'm going to have problems with inventory. It touches the checkout, both purchasing as well as using a gift card. We kind of have two different paths through the checkout. It works with, it messes with invoicing, being able to pay with a gift card. I mean, it kind of just messes with everything. I did not want to do that. But as I dug in, and it's a significant course, because again, the developer test is a significant test, or the expert developer test is significant. I learned a lot, and even some really cool new best practices that I think kind of came out of that. So the checkout is incredibly important. Make sure, because ultimately it's UI components as well. So you don't have to know what, I'm trying to think like the UI component in tracks or import or export. You don't really have to have a mastery of that kind of information. You need to, though, understand how to customize the checkout. And again, steps and basic ideas as far as how to do that. So that is the expert developer test. The most difficult areas. And I'm not saying you don't study the other areas. Those are important areas to study too. But these are the two most difficult areas that you want to dedicate, maybe depending on your experience, 40% of your time, 40 to 50% of your time to just these two areas. Okay, front-end developer. So these are the two most difficult areas for that one. Static assets as well as JavaScript. So how to work with this. The static assets would be basically using working with less, customizing that, best practices for that, as well as then JavaScript, how to call JavaScript, how to manage it. The JavaScript does not, again, I don't think it covers at all UI components. There might be a question as far as how to initialize a UI component on there, but it's not talking about how to edit them or manage them or using, I don't think it's even hardly talking about using Knockout. I could be wrong on that, but very, very little conversation if it is about that. Mostly it's just how to call JavaScript, how to manage it, that sort of thing. So front-end developer, again, I put this as the second or third easiest test of the Magento repertoire. Again, don't think it's easy, but it is easier. JavaScript developer, this was the one I did not want to take, but I ended up taking it last year. Boy, I should remember the score I got on that. I think it was in the 70s. So this one, I felt it was actually pretty straightforward until we got into UI components. Once we got into UI components, all bets were off and it was difficult. It covers checkout on the front end. It covers UI components in the back end in the Adminhtml area. You want to be good with UI components. So what I recommend here is work through the study guide and ask yourself questions. Okay, how would I implement something that does this? Okay, if it's talking about initializing a UI component, how do I go initialize the UI component? How do I pass data to this UI component? And how do I send data from one UI component to another? Just build very, very basic UI components, and you will be successful. I would suggest, if you are struggling with this, go register for a couple months of VNI Kopp's Mage 2 TV, and he breaks down UI components in a way that, not in the JavaScript study guide. Where was that? Maybe that's the Architect study guide. I do some linking back to Vinay's the videos that he's recorded. Very well done. And the thing that has made UI components make a lot more sense to me is when I've started from the most basic minimum UI component ever. I started with that, and that's, again, what he works through. That kind of opened my eyes. Let me put it this way. The UI components XML structure that is available for the admin areas, that is basically a front for building up a JavaScript system. You do not have to use that XML. In fact, in some ways, XML is kind of obtuse to understand and use. Sufyan said exactly here, UI components really are a pain. Yes, they can be. And ultimately, the more you use them, the more you get familiar with them, the easier it is for you in this way. But one thing to also remember is you want to become an expert at this before you take the test. So you want to change UI components really are a pain, which I totally get and sympathize with. In order for you to pass the test, you want to change that to be, I am a master of UI components. At that point, I believe you will be ready to take the test. But breaking those down into small little tiny pieces, understanding it from the JavaScript side, and then adding the XML side to that. Again, in the case of the JavaScript developer test, I don't think that's necessary for expert, but for JavaScript, I would definitely say it's necessary. Start with the raw JavaScript as far as the basic UI component, initialize that on the front end, and start working it from there. And then you will see how the UI component XML maps into that. It's really just an elaborate system, a really elaborate system for initializing JavaScript on the, I say front end, it's really the Adminhtml, but that's really all it is. And I think the checkout well demonstrates that. One other thing, just as a side note, it's so easy to get locked in to thinking that this UI component XML in the Adminhtml area, that's the only way to build out UI components. It's not. It is absolutely not. In fact, I see that it's good to master that, but then the next step is to actually eliminate the XML from there when necessary. I'm not saying it always necessary, but it starts becoming a box. There's only so much you can do in the UI component XML. It becomes a box, and at some point you need to be able to get outside that box, move and work up past being inside that box. All right, Master Architect. So UI components are found on this. And I know we all dislike UI components, but it is what it is. And it is part of the Magento. It is part of this test. And again, UI components are really powerful. As you understand and master them, you will become the go-to person in your company. You're going to become more valuable. And which one of us doesn't like being more valuable? We love being valuable. It's just part of human nature. So the more indispensable we can make ourselves, that's called job insurance. You know, we can't go out and actually get a policy to make sure that we have a job, insurance policy to make sure we have a job, but we can do that through our own personal investment, and that is through these tests. So UI components, it is found on Master Architect as well. Again, I don't think it's the most intense description of how to build a UI component and remembering class names. It's not that. It's more in general steps on how to do that. Okay, and commerce features. Business practitioner and master and master architect, both of these do cover commerce. The questions on master architect are not the most in-depth when it comes to commerce features, but they are, they can definitely, well, if you're not familiar with commerce at all, don't take it. There's enough questions on there that if you do not know those answers, you would have to get basically everything else 100%, and that just doesn't happen. So commerce features, you have to have Commerce Edition in order to pass this test. And then get into those features. For example, like target rules. How does target rules work? When is these target rules, when are the products for the target rules calculated? How are they calculated? What operations triggers these calculations? Staging, really big deal on this test. How do you work with staging entities? How does, what changes are there to the event observers through with commerce and staging? Things like that. There's also, make sure you know your dependency injection and sort orders. There's some really complex questions on there about that. So again, I guess that's not commerce features. That's not UI components either. But these are the two areas that I see people scoring the poorest marks on for the Master Architect test. And then business practitioner. These two areas, again, people struggle in. So architecture. This one is tricky because it also covers Magento Cloud. Magento Cloud is, I'm guessing a lot of solution specialists, business practitioners, project managers, etc., salespeople, just don't use cloud. It's pretty much the developers, right? So understanding how to use cloud just doesn't really, it's hard to get that registered. So the architecture is difficult. Scoping. So what websites, stores, and store views should we have for a given website? And again, those questions are always phrased in the minimum. What is the minimum number to be added? Because again, if we add too many, for example, if we can get away with one store view, but the administrator or the business practitioner in this case adds an extra website, will you just increase the maintenance, the overhead for the administrator later down the road? So architecture is incredibly important to understand how Magento works, how these scopes affect performance in the application, and that's why it's a difficult part of the test. The second one here is Magento features. And this one is the longest of all the objectives. I think it covers maybe 30% of the test, if I remember correctly. The Magento features, though, it requires you to know Magento really well. So what's available in store configuration? But again, it's not just, okay, how would you go change, how do you change the links in on this part of the page? What steps? Okay, do you go to store configuration? Do you go to store configuration this value and then this value? Or is it store configuration that value and that value? That is not how it is. So the answers are usually quite diverse. There's sometimes they're similar, but very rarely are any of the answers memorization based. In other words, you go read a book, you memorize these things, and you'll be able to pass the test. That's for almost all questions not how it works. So the business practitioner covers these two areas. Okay, that's what I want to talk about for that area. Again, just reviewing the most important subjects for you to study. Hopefully you've written those down, or you can go back through the video, or I'm happy to go back and remind you of whatever it was. If you didn't get those written down, that's what you want to study. That's what I see people failing on. Study on those. Now, after taking the test, there's something that came up recently I wanted to bring up with you all. After taking the test, what to expect. Now, ultimately, if you pass the test, you can expect great happiness and hopefully a good celebration because you have worked hard, you have passed this test, and now you have this credential on your resume. And it's a pretty significant credential. I hear merchants all over are pushing harder and harder for the agency's people to be certified. And that would include you if you are working at an agency. Now, what to expect after this? And you will start having recruiters knocking on your door. I can guarantee it. You post on LinkedIn, you will have recruiters knocking on your door. They will promise you great salary, great benefits, and lots of time off at this new job that they have for you. And of course, it's up to you to decide whether you want to take that or not. My suggestion to you is, especially if your company is paying for you to take the test, if they're paying, it's $300-400 for take the test. If they're paying for this, and as well the study materials, my suggestion is to you to stick it out for at least 6 to 12 months. And here's the reason. First, to show, if nothing else, gratitude back to your company for the investment that they've made into you, but also for your personal benefit. You have established a track record at this company. You are already working with your merchants, and they will see your personal development. They will see this improvement that you've made into yourself, and they will notice the difference. So you stick it out for another 6 to 12 months there. You might not be making as much money as you want, but you are now investing these new skills into the people that you are already working with, and they will notice a difference. So it's an opportunity in the existing context to use this information, what you have gathered, and to put it into practice, as opposed to now switching to a new company where you already have a new learning curve, new clients to work with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then you're also trying to put these new skills into practice. I feel like sticking it out at 6 to 12 months will allow you to solidify these skills, this information that you've learned, and then you go make the switch if that is really what you want to do. But those two things I think will help you. It will help the company that you work for. as far as being able to make the most of your investment and their investment in these skills that they have helped you acquire, and that you have also helped yourself acquire. So just be prepared for that. The Magento market is incredibly hot. Certified developers, certified business practitioners are incredibly high demand, and you're going to have a lot of recruiters knocking on your door. So that is a good thing. Consider it a good thing when you achieve that. But also, I do suggest that you keep in mind the other impacts of said job change, and you consider how that will affect yourself as well as others. So that's what I wanted to say there. Is there any other questions? I'm more than happy to answer those today. Any other questions? Otherwise, this will be a little bit shorter of a webinar. So again, we will have a developer study group, and I'll post it everywhere. So we'll have a developer study group next week. Oh, no, excuse me, 2 weeks from now. We're skipping next week. I want to take a little break. 2 weeks from now, we're going to dive head first into it, and we're gonna make sure that you guys are 100% prepared to pass those developer exams. Specifically, I'm focusing on those, the professional developer as well as the expert developer. Absolutely, Charles. Yes, wait till you get certified, my friend. Wait till you get certified. They're going to get knocking a lot. They'll be beating down the door. They will be beating down that door once you get certified. And I also want to extend my gratitude to Commerce Hero for helping also sponsor this. They're, as far as knocking down the door, they're a great source for that. They hook a lot of developers and people up with agencies. And so if you are looking to do a job change, definitely worth creating a profile there and seeing what they bring to you. So Kalen is a great guy and has really done an excellent job with building out Commerce Hero. So yeah, that would be a great place to consider there. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so we might just wrap it up for today. It looks like we're a little bit early, but if there's no other questions, I'll be happy. Well, if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But otherwise, we can wrap it up and get on to our days. So again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Been a little bit sad wrapping up this portion of our certification challenge. It's been incredibly exciting to have you all here, and I look forward to continuing into the future. Make sure to continue watching Slack. Remember that survey I posted? Well, so we just wrapped that up yesterday, and there is some really, really cool insights I'm going to pull out of there and show to you all here in the upcoming weeks. Some stuff that I think will help you tremendously as developers, which is my goal. That's 100% my goal, is to help you as developers. Certification helps you as developers, and I've identified quite a few other ways that I also can help you as developers. I'm a developer. I know you all, most of you are developers. And it is my goal to help you in any way possible. So anyways, it has been a terrific honor to be with you all these past, was it almost 12 weeks? Maybe it is 12 weeks, somewhere in there. So it's been an honor, and I wish you the best. Feel free, hit me up on Slack. You know how to reach me there. Send me an email, joseph@swiftauthor. I am here. I am available for you, and I look forward to helping you out and to become certified. So good. It was good seeing you all. Thank you so much for joining.